Gear up, Scooter fam. Today we're going to compare the Apollo Go to the Segway MaxG3. As I said, we're going to be comparing the Apollo Go to the Segway MaxG3. Before we get into that, I did want to talk about a few things. So first of all, Fluid Freeride got bought out by Wilson's e-scooters and then another company or something like that. They bought Fluid Freeride out, so I haven't seen anything on their site. The site's still up and it seems active. I haven't seen anything, like I said, on there saying change, management or ownership changed on the Fluid site yet. But I'll keep you guys posted if and when I see anything. Another update on the tire pressure monitor. I did take it off, and I've ridden my Apollo Go a couple of times, and I'm still losing a little bit of air, more on the rear than the front. And so I don't think that's the tire pressure monitor causing the issue. So whether or not I put the tire pressure monitor back on the Go, I'm still debating. I kind of like the phone, using the phone as display. Not necessarily because I need the phone as display to see how fast I'm going. It is handy, but I just kind of like having a good place to put my phone, a secure place to put my phone when I'm riding. So given that, I may not go back to the tire pressure monitor. I got it for the Klima, but I just don't have the room to put it on there. So I could probably use some zip ties and pull the motor cable more towards the outside so it would clear, but it's hitting the motor cable every time it spins around. So once again, there's just not enough clearance, and I could try to create some clearance there without probably too much trouble. And I may try to do that in the future because I don't think I'm going to use it on the Apollo Go, mainly because I'm going to be checking the Apollo Go pretty frequently anyway to add air to it, because it does seem to lose air slowly. It's doesn't have a leak or anything like that. It's just part of the scooter riding and those wheels being so small. Same thing happened on the Journey Max. Even though the Journey Max uses tubes, I still got a little bit of air leakage after riding a little while, mostly in the back, where the weight is mostly on. So it's just it's probably just part of that. Now the Klima, I don't have a lot of air loss at all. I rarely ever have to add any air to those tires, but they're pretty big tires, 10 by almost 3.5. I say 3.5 because if you get PMTs, you have to get 10 by 3.5s. 10 by 3s won't seal. So if you need them, you will have to get 10 by 3.5s. Now I may try to put PMTs on the Klima in the future. I've debated about it before, and I think I believe I'm going to try it eventually. I mean, there's other options for me to go, but I really want to give it a shot. So maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll feel like it's worth it. But I want to find out for myself. So PMTs probably will be the next tires I put on my Klima. I've considered getting them just to see, how it goes. But then I'm also not in a hurry to spend $200 on some PMTs to test it out. Not yet, anyway. So if I ever get to that point where I do want to blow $200 to test it out. I might. Otherwise, it'll probably wait until I have to replace those tires. So when I have to replace them, if I haven't replaced them, if I don't switch them and then just have those as kind of like the backups, because they're still in great shape. I don't know how long it's going to be. I've got 200 miles on it ish so far, 215, I think. Still doing really well. Then I may or may not. But I'll put the tire pressure monitor down in the link for the description. It's affiliate link to Amazon, and I'll also put a picture up here for you guys to see. I did have a viewer ask about it, so he was curious. He wanted to get one for himself. So I'll leave a link in the description for that, and then like I said, I'll show you guys a picture. It works great. I have no problems with it. Just got to make sure you have the clearance, and if you don't, that you can create a little room because it can be a tight squeeze. But the Apollo Go, even though it's smaller than the Klima, clears no problem. So one of the things that I was going to talk about was the different types of tires. So you got tubeless tires, you got tube tires on the Journey Max. I got tube tires, and I don't enjoy changing the tires on the Journey Max. Is my least favorite thing about the Journey Max. If that were an easier process, or they used maybe the same kind of tires like the tubeless tires, maybe it would be a better experience. But I've had a couple flats, one on each of my Journey Maxes. Although I only have one now, I gave one to a buddy of mine. It's a real pain to change those tubes. So I prefer moving toward the tubeless tires in hopes that I can change those a little easier. And I know I can change them easier. There's no question about that. Not having to deal with the tube is going to make that much easier. But is it going to reseal? When I change the tire, or if I have a flat, I've heard of people having flats and then trying to fix their tire, but they couldn't get it reinflated because the bead didn't lost its seal or whatever. That's something I've never had to worry about. Not something I had too much experience with is sealing a bead of a tire. I just don't have that in my wheel well. So that's gonna have to be something kind of new that I kind of learn. I got a couple of ideas on how to deal with that. I watch lots of videos, and so I feel like I could take a decent stab at it. But I don't want to be in the middle of a ride and have my tire go flat, and then I have a plug kit, so I can plug it and air it back up again. But if the bead loses its seal or I can't reseal it, it's not going to do me any good to have a plug kit and an air pump, a portable air pump. So automatic air pump. And so I personally also, I'll put a link for the air pump and a picture of the air pump I used to. It's a really great air pump. I really like it. I watched. I did a bunch of research on this pump, and I found it for a pretty good deal on Amazon, and I've used it to make my life much easier, airing up all my scooters. So it's digital. You twist it on, and the pressure shows you right there. So I don't have to take my pressure gauge and push it on there to see if I'm going to need pressure. I'll plug it in, see where pressure's at. I have it already saved in there at 50 pounds, and then I could just, if I need it, I turn it on. If not, I just unhook it and go to the next one. It's so simple and easy, and I prefer it a million times over using just a regular tire pressure gauge, which is what I was doing before I got this. So really nice addition. And if you need the little valve stem extenders, I'll stick those in the description as well. Those two things are, I think if you can work it out on your scooter, there are three things worth having, which is a tire pressure monitor, a tire valve extender if you need it. On the Journey Max, I certainly needed it. On these two scooters, I can reach the valves without just with what comes on the air pump. But if you do need them, they're great valve extenders, and I highly recommend them. Very cheap, $5 or something like that, but they're really great. And then, like I said, I'll put their link to the tire pressure monitor and the air pump, the portable air pump that I use. So yeah, I got a couple of plans on how to seal the bead, and I've seen some different videos, and two ways that I know of. With the tire strap, which is to create pressure around the rim and the tire, and then put air in there. The problem is if you're doing it at home with the tire pump, that's kind of slow. And the one I have is decent, but it's not like going to the gas station and having a compressed air just fill it up really quickly. So that's more difficult. And so the couple of ways that I know how to try it is to get a strap, a ratchet strap, and ratchet the tire down onto the rim, and then you can hold it there while you put in air, so that the bead starts to seal as air is going in there, and the pressure in the vacuum, the air pressure starts sealing the bead itself, that you can release the strap and continue airing up the tire once the bead is sealed. So you seal the bead with the strap on there. The other way, which I think might be a lot easier, a little more expensive, I guess, in the long run, but quick and easy, is with a CO2 cartridge. What you have to do is you have to take the valve stem core out, and then you use, once it's ready to be sealed, or you got the new tire on, or whatever it is, you take the valve stem core out, and then you take the CO2 pump, and you inflate the tire really quickly. Now it's not going to stay. You're not going to try to like hurry up and put the valve stem core in there or anything like that. But what you do is you take the valve stem core out, put the CO2 cartridge, air up the tire until you hear the pop and the bead seals, and then you release the CO2 pump. And when you have the CO2 released, all the air is going to come back out. But assuming that the tire's already beaded, it's going to stay beaded because the air is going to leak out, but it's not going to have any pressure on it. So all you got to do is now reinstall the stem core and then use your regular pump to air the tire up again. I'll be trying probably both of those things in the future, possibly when I change out the PMTs on my Klima, if nothing happens before then, where it's a necessity for me to do. So I don't have either one of those things. I do have the CO2 pump on the way. It's just a little handheld, gun for the tire or whatever. It looks like a little sprayer or something. But the CO2 hooks to the bottom, and I'll show you guys. But I'm going to test it out. I'm never going to recommend you guys get anything that I don't try myself, that I don't have good experience with myself. So I'll update you guys once I give it a shot myself. Of course, I'll make a video on it, and if it works and I like it, I'll show you guys what I used and how I used it, and you guys can use it for yourself. But I would try and probably, the easiest, simplest way would be to use a CO2 cartridge. But of course, you're going to run out of CO2. If you have a strap, you're never going to run out of a strap. You just got to make sure you don't lose it. And then you can just use it again and again and again and again for infinity until you just get tired or whatever. With the CO2 cartridges, you're going to have to buy more. I'm buying 6 to start with, along with the little pump thing. So that'll be already ordered those because I am anticipating, just in case, I'm going to have those in my bag. And like I said, I am anticipating, I'm sort of planning just in case I have a flat, and eventually I will change tires, certainly on the Klima, like I said, possibly to PMTs next time I do have to change them, just to try them out. A little expensive. I know I can get cheaper tires that are probably, at least close to as good as the PMTs, but till I try them out for myself, I won't know if it's worth it. I've tried the other things. I tried the 4 piston calipers. I didn't notice a big difference at all, and at first I didn't like the feeling of them. Once I changed to a larger rotor, which I didn't like, it wasn't worth it to me. Going on the Klima, I like the 2 piston calipers, the Logan 2 piston calipers on there, just fine. So I've still got the 4 piston calipers, but I don't use them. I will likely try them out to see. If I don't like them, I will never spend, $200 on PMTs again. But if I find out that they really are worth it and they last me a while, I don't want to buy $200 PMTs for the Klima just so I have to buy them again in a couple of months because they wear out so quickly. So I won't do that if that's the case. But I'll test it out and we'll find out how that goes. But first thing I got to do is figure out how to get those tires to tire beads to seal and go from there. Last thing I want to talk about real quick before we move on to the video. Probably taking a while here, but I wanted to talk about real world range and sort of range estimates that they put on the sites, and even people testing range, different way you test range. So when you're stating range, whether it's the scooter company, whether it's a tester on YouTube stating range, I understand everybody wants accurate results, and no one actually gets the range that people state. Even some of the testers, it's tough to get their range. Yeah, your weight might be a little different. Your terrain might be a little different. How you ride the scooter might be a little different. But, and that's one of the things I've noticed about range is that I get more than I expect sometimes. And sometimes I get a lot closer to what I expect. On the go, I get pretty much what I expected out of the go. And that goes back to my main experience with the Journey Max. They're very similar sized scooters in battery, power, everything. So they get really close to the same range, and that's what I expected. Now, when I got the Klima, I was not expecting to get the range that I got. Everything I'd read, everything I've watched, people might get 20, 25 miles out of the 30 amp hour Klima. And so I was a little nervous that I might not even get the same range from my Klima that I get from my Journey Max. And that was a real concern. I actually was nervous. I was actually nervous that I wouldn't be able to make 2 trips on my Klima to my normal places, Walmart, wherever, without having to recharge. And that's one thing I'm trying to avoid. I really don't want to get a scooter that I've got to recharge without making 2 trips to 2 8-mile trips, 4 miles each way. So a couple of places I go, as far as I go on a daily basis, is about 4 miles each way. Sometimes I take more than one trip and so it stretches out. But for the most part, I'm taking single trips on a daily basis about 4 miles when I go out each way. So 8 miles total, 8 to 10 miles a day, probably max, honestly. But like I said, I've done more than that, but I was kind of trying to do that. Or I planned on doing something a little extra that day or whatever, that's what I was, intending on doing. It just didn't pop up that way or anything. So the most I have to travel in a day is 8 to 10 miles. In any case, I didn't even consider at the time that this scooter has a 60 volt battery, where I'm coming from a 36 volt battery, and 25 amp hours, where I'm coming from, I don't even know, like 10, 12 amp hours or something like that. And it's a little less than the Go, and it goes like 15. So maybe it's like 12.75 or something. In any case, it's very close to the Go. But not the Klima. The Klima's 60 volt system with a 25 amp hour battery. Now, obviously, it's faster too. It's bigger. It can, all these things. But I'm using the scooter to do the same thing. I don't go as fast as the scooter can possibly go on every scooter I jump on. I go as fast as I can go for the situation that I'm in. In other words, I'll ride the Apollo Go and the Klima at the same speed, because they both, that's as fast as I need to go. The Apollo Go goes just as fast as I need to go. Now the Journey Max, I was getting kind of tired of being held back at 20 miles an hour. It can only go about 20, 21. And in certain situations, I just kind of wanted to go like a little faster, maybe 25 miles an hour. And so I can do that on the Go, and I can do that on the Klima easy. But I don't do it much. Most of the time I'm 15, 20 miles an hour, to be honest. I might glance down and be going barely over 20. But a nice chill ride out when I'm doing my little errands, doing for a nice ride or whatever, 15 to 20 miles an hour is great. So but the point, so I didn't expect the Klima to perform as well. What did I get out of the Klima? I'm getting 40 to 50 miles per charge out of the Klima on my rides. Now, first couple, I've only had it a short time, and I've ridden as far as riding it because of the weather and everything. But the times that I've ridden, when it was colder, I got about 40 miles. When the first couple of charges that I ran, I was testing, so I know exactly how many I got. I literally got 50 miles, both of my first two charges. So 50 miles was the mark that I got in nice weather, doing my normal riding. So that may not stay at that level. The more I ride it, and for whatever reason that I end up getting, maybe still 40 to 50 miles per charge. And so why did I read that the Klima would get less miles than the Apollo Go? The Apollo Go, it's 18 miles. It doesn't make sense. I got a 60-volt battery, a 25 amp hour. The Go's a 36-volt battery with a 15 amp hour battery. And so that, there's a big difference. Riding those scooters to accomplish the same task, you're going to get a lot more range out of the bigger battery, out of the 60-volt battery, than you are a 36-volt battery. But once again, you've got to be assuming that you're using, on some of these tests, these tests are done not in a real world scenario. The people that test them, they're testing them at max, and they're going over some of the same areas that they go over all the time. So they're used to doing that, and they're going as fast as they possibly can go on whatever scooter they're riding. But that's not reality. That's not how I ride them. Well, maybe that's how some people ride them. That's not how I ride them. I don't think the average person would ride them that way. There might be some. I get it, but I think the average person is probably more like me, just riding them. Even if they're going to work, they're not maxing it out. They're going as fast as they need to go for whatever their period. The point is, whether you buy a scooter that can go 70 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour, you're probably not going to be going too much different on those scooters, because you don't need to go 70 miles an hour. I know someone told me that they did, and they had a long highway stretch to use at whatever, for wherever they were at, and I get it. But the average person probably doesn't fall into that category. So I'm sure there are exceptions. There always are. So it's not all inclusive when I say that, but certainly for the general average person, I believe that there's going to be a big difference riding a scooter with 60 volts and 25 amp hours versus 36 volts. I think there's definitely going to be a difference in range. I mean, I experienced myself. So it doesn't make sense that the Klima gets such a low estimate. Or, for example, the Emu Cruiser, the beast, the range king. The Emu Cruiser is not a range king compared to the 25 amp hour Nami Klima. They have close to the same range. Have you ever heard the Nami Klima be called a range king? No. You heard the range king is supposedly the Emu Cruiser, and it's the size of the battery, how fast the scooter can go, and continue that. You ride the Klima at the same speed that you ride the Emu Cruiser, and you're gonna get at least as good a range, at least as good, maybe a little better. The 60-volt system, you tend to have a less voltage sag with the higher voltage systems, and so there's a little bit of gain there. So I'll be willing to bet that you can get at least as much range using the same speed, because in these tests they use different speeds, 30, 40 for all different scooters. So if you're riding an Apollo Go, which can go 25 miles an hour, or you're riding a scooter that can go 15 miles an hour, it's not fair to state the range on a scooter that can go 15 miles an hour versus a scooter that can go 70 miles an hour. Because if you ride that 70 mile an hour scooter at 15 miles an hour, you can go hundreds of miles. But eco mode on the 15 mile an hour scooter is like 5 miles an hour. And eco mode on the 70 miles an hour scooter is like 30 miles an hour. So two big different scooters. And so range should be taken, in my opinion, from a perspective of what you're going to be doing if we're on the average everyday basis. And for me, it's about 15 to 20 miles an hour. So it doesn't matter whether I have a scooter that can go 70 miles an hour or a scooter that can go 15 to 20 miles an hour, because that's about as fast as I'm going to go anyway. I like to be able to go just a little bit faster than that. 25-ish, perfect. Now, on my Klima, that's where I go. I can go 42 miles an hour if that's what I want to do. Have I ever did it? No, I don't need to do it. Like I said, maybe one day I find a big open space where I feel comfortable, but I don't have any places like that. I'm not going to jump out in the street and go 40 miles an hour. No, thank you. And I don't have anywhere that I can get up to that kind of speed safely that I'm aware of. And so if I had a space like that and a bunch of gear, I might get out there and try to go 40 miles an hour. But I don't have a space like that that I know of so far, and so there's no way I can try to get that scooter up that fast. But going 25-ish miles an hour, not too big of a deal. There are a few places I know I can do that at without too much trouble, but not that fast. So in general, I'm just not going to be riding a scooter that fast just because it can do that. Like I said, I know there's people out there that do that, but that's not my approach, and my guess is not the average person's approach either. So that's one thing that I want to talk about range. Another thing that I wanted to talk about range is on the other side. So if you can get 20 miles out of the Apollo Go, could I get 20 miles out of maybe so. Could I get 20 miles out of the Journey Max? Maybe so. Did I ever get 20 miles out of the Journey Max? No. Will I ever get 20 miles out of the Apollo Go? Unlikely. And the reason why is because I'm not going to ride that scooter down to zero. It's not even good for it. So to me, it doesn't make sense to quote the range past 20%. 25% is as low as you really want to go on a scooter. Once you start getting close to 20%, you really should consider recharging your battery. You don't want to continuously go down to those low percentages. So it doesn't make sense to quote down to nothing or give you an estimate of a range down to nothing. If I can go 6 and on the Journey Max, I could go about 16 miles, 2 8-mile trips. Easy. I could probably go another couple miles before I started to notice a voltage sag and the acceleration slowdown. I still didn't stop or whatever it was, but I could tell it was getting down to the part of the battery where it needed to kind of back off to still get, to still perform. So I don't want to go there. I don't want to do that. So my usable range on the Journey Max is about 16 to 18 miles. It's not 20 miles. It's certainly not more than 20 miles, because I'm not ever going to get that much out of it ever. So what's the point of saying it? You don't say, I don't want to get, you can get 20 miles, but you can't. You can't, because it's not good for your scooter. So just because theoretically you could, if you wanted to mess up your scooter, I don't want those numbers. I certainly don't want inflated numbers. I want to know what I really can get out of the scooter. So when I'm telling you guys the range that I'm getting, that's what I'm getting. I didn't run that Klima down to zero to get 50 miles. I ran it down to 28%. 20. I think I got down to 20, 22, something like that. I got down to 20 or 25 or less, but I did not get down below 20% to tell you that gets 40 to 50 miles per charge. I did that getting down to 20-ish% before I needed to recharge. So that's real mileage. That's real range. That's me telling you this is what you can expect to really get. This is what I really get. Now, of course, everybody rides different. I just explained all that. Different size people, different way they ride, different everything, terrain, hills, you name it. If I'm quoting a range, that's a consistent range that I'm getting, doing the way I ride the scooter, and it's on my everyday travels, right? Every day. So I can't get, it doesn't make sense for me to tell you I can get 20 miles if I can only get 16 to 18. It makes more sense to tell you I can get 16 to 18 before I have to recharge. That's real world range. Real world range is not going to zero, and it's certainly not going down to dangerously low battery percentages. those are the two things I wanted to address and talk about. When I do range tests, I don't actually do a range test. I'll just test range. I have my odometer. I know when I got the scooter. I know how far I went before I had to charge it again, and that's what I state as my tested range. So I've tested the Klima at 50 miles of range, usable, everyday real range for me, no problem. The Apollo Go, I tested the same, just as I got out of the Journey Max, which is about 16 to 18 miles. Could I squeeze out 20 as possible? I haven't actually tried that on the Go. I did attempt that on the Journey Max, only to notice the sag and acceleration, but I haven't done that on the Apollo Go, and I don't necessarily plan to. I was just trying to see on the Journey Max. I wanted to kind of test its limits, not to zero, but once I noticed the drop, I'm like, well, this is as far as I need to go. And so those are how I ride the scooter. Even though the scooter can go faster, I'm still not comfortable going that fast in my daily use of the scooter. So my real world range is what I'm getting in a real world scenario, down to a point where I'm no longer comfortable riding the scooter without recharging it. Simple as that. It doesn't do me any good to tell you it goes 100 miles if you're never actually going to get 100 miles out of the scooter for whatever reason it is. But I can tell you that realistically, that's what I get. And that's real usable range. All right, hey, let's go into taking a look at the Apollo Go compared to the Segway MaxG3 coming out. Two interesting scooters. I decided to compare them. They're a little different, but it's intriguing, and I talked about them a little bit before on a previous video, and I think I mentioned possibly maybe doing a comparison. And so I did want to go over that today, a little bit of a comparison between the two, because I think there's some interesting things about them when you look at them side by side. They're really close. So the Apollo Go right now is $9.99, as you can see on here. We have so the scooter is $9.99, and the Segway MaxG3 is $8.99. $100 difference. I believe the MaxG3 will probably go up, maybe to around the price of the Go when the Go is on regular price, which is about $1,300. We'll see, but that's what I think is the estimate. It will likely go up. Even the MaxG2 stays around $1,000 most of the time. So if the MaxG3 does that, it'll hover around $1,000, but it is a little bit nicer spec'd out than the MaxG2, so it may go slightly above $1,000. We'll have to see how that plays out, and it'll depend on the market and so forth. Now, the range on the Apollo Go, I think I've stated it is 16 to 18 miles, somewhere in there. I would estimate it to be, I could ride it 2 8-mile trips without having to be concerned and recharge the battery. So very, 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 it's almost identical to what I get on the Journey Max, just about identical. Top speed on the Apollo Go is 25 miles an hour. 26, I think I actually got up to, but I didn't sustain 26. I did reach 26, and then I leveled out at 25. So 25, 26 miles an hour personally is what I got on it. I wasn't going downhill or anything. I mean, the wind could have been in my back. That's possible. But in any case, 25, 26 miles an hour is what I got personally on a GPS app. On the Segway is quoted at 28 miles an hour, but you never know how that compares to the real world. Might be actually closer to the Apollo Go. The 0 to 15 time for the Apollo Go is 3.7 seconds, and with the MaxG3, it's claimed to be 2.4 seconds. That's with the boost mode. The Apollo Go has two 350 watt motors, and the Segway MaxG3 has one single rear 850 watt motor. The battery size on the Apollo Go is a 36 volt by 15 amp hour, and the battery on the Segway MaxG3 is a 48 volt 12.75 amp hour. Both of them use a standard thumb throttle. The tires on the Apollo Go are 9-inch tubeless tires with sealant. And on the Segway, there are 11-inch tubeless tires with sealant. The weight on the Apollo Go is right around 49 pounds, and the weight on the Segway MaxG3 is 55 pounds. Roughly 5 pounds difference. The maximum load on the Apollo Go is 265 pounds, and the maximum load on the Segway MaxG3 is 286 pounds. The Apollo Go is IP66 and the Segway MaxG3 is IPX6. All right, now, some thoughts. The Apollo Go is a dual motor scooter, and the Segway MaxG3 is a rear motor single motor scooter. And so when I'm looking at some of these specs, and I think I talked about it a little bit before, I find it hard to believe that the Segway can outperform the Apollo Go. I find that hard to believe. Now, I know the Segway is a 48 volt system versus a 36 volt system. Slightly bigger battery on the MaxG3 because 48 volts. Now, if you look at total watts, you got 700 for the Apollo Go. You've got 850 for the MaxG3. So you've got 150 extra watts with the MaxG3 and a bigger battery at 48 volts. Everything else taken out of the picture, the scooter's not that much different. You got 11-inch tires on the MaxG3 versus 9-inch on the Apollo Go. Now, smaller tires usually signify more torque, which leads to better hill climbing and faster acceleration. Now, I know the Segway MaxG3 has never been tested that I know of so far on hills or for acceleration. Now, they stated the acceleration. I haven't seen a hill climb test, and they state it can get like 30% grade, and I think the Apollo Go states a 25% grade. So they even state a higher grade of climb for the MaxG3, even considering it's a rear motor scooter. I find that very interesting, and once again, that it not just does better than the Apollo Go from 0 to 15, but like blows it out of the water. So on the Journey Max, I believe it's tested at 3.8 seconds, under 4 seconds, 0 to 15. Most of the single motor scooters are about half that, so like 7 to 8 seconds to 15 miles an hour. But for some reason, a MaxG3 can go 2.4, can go 0 to 15 in 2.4 seconds. And once again, relative to the Klima can go 0 to 15 in 2 seconds. It's got dual 1,000 watt motors, a 60 volt system with 40 amp hour controllers, and it can go 0 to 15 in 2 seconds flat. That's about 0.4 seconds from the Segway MaxG3. And the difference between the Segway MaxG3 and the Apollo Go, 1.3 seconds faster. The Segway MaxG3 is 1.3 seconds faster than the Apollo Go based on what's being stated here. 1.3 seconds faster than the Apollo Go. And the Klima is only 0.4 seconds faster than the MaxG3, which means the MaxG3 should just be blazing speed. And if it can go that fast, it can certainly climb hills very well. Acceleration and hill climbing run hand in hand. Any scooter you see has been tested for acceleration, but you're not sure how it'll do on hills, just compare it to another scooter that has similar acceleration. Now the next thing is where the power is being applied. Everything at the rear, that the scooter's at a disadvantage. It's at a disadvantage because of the position, not having the front being pulled along with the rear. The rear is doing all the pushing. So up hills and for acceleration, that can be just a little more difficult. It's not possible. And then you got the 11-inch. You got the 11-inch tires, which the larger the tire diameter, circumference, the less torque you have to work with, and therefore you lose acceleration and you lose the ability to climb hills. So going up to 11-inch tires, although it would be very nice for some things, the ride and so forth, that should work against the 0 to 15. I know it's in boost mode or whatever, but still 2.4 seconds 0 to 15, even if it's boost mode. That's great. I love boost mode because it's only there when you need it. You don't just, you're not just using it all the time. I never even tried to get 0 to 15 in the top as fast as the Klima can go. That's crazy. Even 0 to 15, I'm not, it's not in a hurry to do it. So, I've seen it done and I know what it can do. And like I said, it's about 2 seconds, but you don't see, 2.4 versus 3.7, 3.8 for the Journey Max and the Apollo Go, which are almost identical. Once again, their 0 to 15s are 3.7 and 3.8. That's what I would expect. They're both dual motor scooters. They both have close to the same size tires, 8.5 and 9. Everything's very close, same battery, everything. But the Segway MaxG3 claims to have all these things, and the speed and the hill climbing and all these 30% grade, 2.4 seconds 0 to 15 boost mode. That's outstanding. That is outstanding. If the scooter can pull that off, that's outstanding. Do I believe it? I don't. I can't say that I buy it. It's hard for me to. I mean, I get it. 36 volt and 48 volt. I get that, but just the fact that you're not really gaining much going from 700 to 850, 150 watts is negligible. Certainly considering that we're not spreading it out. Now, if you had 200, for example, I think the InMotion Climber, where these are 350 watts, I think maybe they're 450 watts. So I think you go from 700 to 900, if I remember correctly, which doesn't gain you very much. But there you're still talking about dual motors. You're still talking about dual motors. And you don't gain a lot going from 350 to 450. Go watch some videos. So the InMotion Climber and the Journey Max and the Apollo Go aren't that different when it comes to acceleration, when it comes to hill climbing. You're not going to see a huge difference there because they're very close. And the Climber has more nominal watts than the MaxG3, but the MaxG3 has a single motor. So therefore, telling me that you can go to 2.4 seconds 0 to 15. Now I believe that the Climber is a 36 volt system. Could be mistaken about that, but I believe it's a 36 volt system as well. Once again, I see a little bit of difference there, but it's very tough for me to wrap my head around this thing getting 2.4 seconds, even in boost mode, 0 to 15. Once again, that type of torque, that type of acceleration should translate into hill climbing ability. So I would expect based on its stated acceleration that it should do at least as good as the Apollo Go or the Journey Max on hills. And I don't think that is true. I don't think it's true. Once again, you got larger tires. It's not even larger tires. The big thing is just that it's not dual motors. The reason I've never gotten a scooter that's not dual motor, because I don't want to have to worry about hills, and I like acceleration if I want it to be there. The only other scooter that I'm aware of that does pretty decent, Segway does have the GT1. I don't know much about the GT3 yet as far as testing goes on that, but the GT1 did pretty well on hills and had a pretty decent acceleration. It wasn't like the GT2, but it had decent acceleration and it could hang with some of the dual motor scooters. But it was a big scooter, 52 volt, really, really beefy scooter. And I'm sure it could outperform some of these little small, dual motor scooters, possibly. But this, is only an 850 watt rear motor scooter. It's a 48 volt system. And I know, if you look at the GT2, the GT2 is only a 52 volt system. And for what they got out of that was really impressive. And it only went up to like 40-ish miles an hour, but it did so really well. So the MaxG3, being that they, it's not nearly what the GT1 or GT2 is. I will give Segway credit for getting out of these scooters what the performance that they do get out of them. If you look at the MaxG2, there's not, it doesn't state that it can get more than 20 miles an hour. It doesn't give all these big specs. Most of the Segways don't even spec out. They're pretty slow scooters and pretty boring scooters, in my opinion. But this one's really got my attention. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, if you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. Consider joining me on Patreon, picking up some merch, or buying me a coffee. Thanks, and happy riding.